All right, it's Tuesday, May 30th, and this is our first sort of daily scrum for our one closing, the closing couple of weeks here. Do we have Bala? I see Bala. I think you did some work on the. Let me.
Yeah,
share.
John. Yeah.
I'll share it if you want to, or if you want to share it either way.
Yeah, please go ahead and share today, John. Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me find it. This is the one. So, which it's this consolidated sprint? Is that the, or do we have a board like thing?
Yeah, I mean, we could do consolidated sprint, or we could
this is the automation, but we also want release in here too, right? Or we could just do them both separately.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just to fill you in, I kind of had some time over the weekend and spent a lot of it on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I missed a lot of messages. I was away for 3.5 days, and I saw come back in.
Yeah, well, it was like, you know, I just had a lot of free time. My wife was still out of town. I'm like, you know what, I need to just sit down and get some stuff done. So yeah. And then I got
thanks, John.
Got into that mode of like, I must make this work. So yeah. I went through the end-to-end provisioning and just a bunch of little tiny things, right? And iterated, and then also put together an approval controller. So it's actually pretty cool now. It's not all checked in, but you can apply a single package variant set, and it'll provision all the, you know, it'll spin up new clusters, bootstrap them, create repositories for them, join those repositories to Nefio. So that's all basically working. I added an auto approval controller so that you can put an annotation on the package revisions and have them automatically get approved instead of having to click propose, approve for all these different packages that get created. There's still some problems. The clusters aren't coming up fully. Maybe it's a CNI issue. I think Wim suggested that might be it. So we'll have to dig into that. But in the course of this, I raised a bunch of issues. So let me actually see your hand, Vish. 1 second. So this is the PR that I've been working on in this regard. And basically I got it down to where you run this one command, gcloud command, and it provisions the whole environment. And then there's a bunch of issues that I've raised that need some resolution. So I think that's kind of the state of things as they are right now. Vish, you have your hand up though.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you, is this part of the PR that you showed? So you preempted me by sharing that. I wanted to make sure that you're talking about this PR. Okay.
Yes, I'm talking about this PR, and what I tried to do is, as I ran into issues, I either raised them, some of them I worked around like this. You know, I just manually built an image and pushed it to our repo, which works for now, but that you know, and it looks like somebody already, Rado maybe already fixed this one, right? So like some of them have already been handled, which is amazing. So I think
is every single one of this a R1 issue? Just a leading question, that's all to ask. Like, oh yeah, looking at all this, I think we are in a good state. We don't have to fix all these issues, or is there like 1 or 2 of them, but is a must fix?
That's a good question.
Just because of the timing. That's why I'm asking the question.
So this one is a must fix, right? We need to get that fixed. Let's maybe go through them. This one's not a must fix. We could just live with manually built images for now. This one's already been fixed. This is not a must fix. It's a debug. It makes debugging harder because failures get swallowed. This is already merged.
Yeah, anything with the kpt.py, probably we can directly use the kpt command directly if it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did, is I just hacked around it, but yeah. This has been fixed. This needs to be fixed and is partially fixed, I think. This needs to be fixed, but it's just a merging of something. This is already fixed. Again, this just needs to merge. This is another thing that needs to merge. I'd like to fix this. I didn't raise an issue for this one. This is just the way we did. This is like part of the process, right? Is discovering the friction and the challenges with the primitives that we've built and the missing primitives. Like a lot of the kept functions that are out there in the world are kind of sucky, honestly. And so we need to improve them. We need to potentially build new ones that meet our needs better. Do those have to happen for R1? Probably not. I would love to see them in an R1 follow-up. But like, so I guess before we, I've already dug into a bunch of this. Like some of these, like this, I think doesn't need to be done in R1. That's kind of a bigger change. So we're super close, actually, to having it where we can spin up and do the whole end-to-end story, but we're not quite there. So I guess the question is for the group is like, how do we want to proceed here? Should we go through the board? Bala, so you took the issues. Can you explain to me? You took the issues that have been created and put them on the board, or what's the sort of status of the board going forward here?
So board, if you go to the consolidated sprint, I mean, that's we could do that if you want to, because if you go to you can change the view from table to the, if you click on the drop down for the consolidated sprint, one above in the consolidated sprint.
Oh, this one. Yes, thank you.
If you change that to board,
okay,
yes, we'll get that view. So we could use that because all sprint 5 items, irrespective of which sub-project or which group it is in, we can find it here. Okay. I also created the issues for the end-to-end test. I created an epic for end-to-end tests and then added a bunch of issues there. Whatever we discussed in the deck that you created. Not this one, actually. There is one more, I think. Not for the, I think that I think that maybe in the end, if we scroll down all the way to the bottom, maybe. Because things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So
these are things from the discussion at the TSC.
Yes. So essentially from the deck, yeah. So we have all those things here. We could use the single board, but if it's overwhelming, if you want to go to the individual board, that's also there as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm okay with it. What I'd like to figure out, and we don't need to do it in the Scrum here. I guess we talked about. Like, I want to make sure one is, I guess, folks have things they can jump in on and contribute if they have the capacity. That there's a clear picture of where we're going and what we're delivering. I think that we have all the pieces, like we talked about in the TSC. It's more gluing them all together, which is what. We had some EDE scripts that had started to do that, and that's what what I iterated on over the last few days, and they've moved pretty close. We're at the point where I guess if we go to that, like basically number 235, 236. 236 is mostly there, but there's still some details, and then we'll get to 230. Okay, 237, 238. Okay, this is actually good. Yeah, we could just go through it in this way. So maybe we can start with, for each of these, a user guide. Like, okay, if I'm a user, here's how I'm going to do number 235. I'm going to, there's two different scenarios. One is the sandbox scenario, and two is the bring your own cluster scenario. The sandbox scenario I want to get, it's basically this command right here, with this pointing to this is pointing to my branch, but we could point this to I put it in the README, but basically this spins up a machine, points it at a boot script or a startup cloud init script that will take that machine, provision the underlying OS. There's actually like a kernel module that has to be built. So it does that. I didn't write all that. That's stuff that Victor and Vish and other folks have written. But it provisions all that and then starts installing all those packages through the Ansible scripts that we have. And then it, basically comes up at the end. The idea would be it would stop at the end of this. So that you would have a fully engaged Nefio. You could go to the UI, you could go to the CLI, and then to do 236.
I have a question on 235. So
yes,
you mentioned two things. One is bring your own cluster, and I also think that bring your own VM also should be an option because not everybody will probably have access to G Cloud.
Yes, that is a great point. And I think the scripts, so I focused on the GCE. There was a script called GCE run, and I split it into GCE init and GCE install sandbox. And GCE init basically just does some stuff and then installs Git, pulls in the repo,
Yeah.
and then goes in and runs it from the repo, the GCE install sandbox. So
correct. Initially, that was actually done by Rado so that we could use it for our end-to-end tests, basically, which will be running on the GCP cloud. So right. I know that is how it naturally progressed to that point. Maybe there are, as part of the documentation, we should probably have scripts if people bring their own VM and don't have a GCP account. They should not get charged for it. They should probably be able to.
And I think those scripts, I know that Victor said that like it can do Vagrant, right? It can do other.
Vagrant and Ubuntu, yes, this time.
So that should become another task, probably.
Makes sense.
Build out the same flow for getting a sandbox up and running in bring your own VM environment, or even, I don't know if somebody wants to do Amazon or whatever, like, or open, like, or OpenStack on Red Hat or something, right? Like whatever we think, and people have the skills, like some of it's like, what can we do because people already know how to do it in that environment. And part of it's what do we think our users would want to consume. So we should probably create issues for a couple different environments and then refactor as much as we can so that like I think 90% of it is already, there's nothing GCE. Once you do this GCE init, I think that what's currently called GCE run could be install sandbox. GCE could just be install sandbox because I think all it does is Ansible scripts basically. I don't think it does anything GCE specific in there. So that could be a good separation, just have different inits that pull it in and run the sandbox. And then for you bring your own, you could just manually git clone, run the install sandbox. So maybe we should start there, is create some issues for that and have some folks work on that and get 235 completely done so that we have a full management environment. And by the way, the management environment setup uses Nefio. So what it does is it takes in order to set up like the management repository and our management staging repository, it uses our repository controllers. So it's pretty cool actually. You kept live apply, our repository package, and then it's using our own controllers to set us up. So it's pretty nice. So do we have sorry, let me switch back. Oh, there's hands up. Sorry, I didn't have the right screens up. I don't know who's first. So
I think I was first.
Ang was first.
Can we decide on 2 or 3 VM environment as the baseline? Because what you described, if I heard correctly, is, you know, Vagrant and potentially OpenStack.
I'm
Or
asking.
is it dependent
everybody
on
here who-
people wanting to contribute?
Yeah, exactly. Depends on who we have to contribute. I don't have a good reason, and maybe other people here do because they know our end users better. I don't have a good reason to pick one thing over the other. We have GCE because Google's, you know, because we've got a Google environment and we're providing funding for some of that. So beyond that, whatever the community, whatever the folks here think is the right choice, we should pick one or two more. I think we should pick at least one that's not in a cloud that you could run on your laptop, and we should pick potentially one other cloud.
And that's the second part of my question is, can one of those environment be a dev environment, so to speak, you know, running on my laptop kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Because anybody who looking to adopt Nephew will need to try it out on their laptop kind of thing.
Yeah, and to Wim's comment I think it is layered right now. Right now, it's just like I said. There's two sections. There's a init that just, even that's not particularly dependent on GCE or anything. That just pulls out the Git repos, and then there's we have it. It's using Ubuntu right now. It is dependent on it being Ubuntu, but if we want to change that, that's fine. But so can we maybe get some volunteers to jump in and do the
I can
provisioning
help
for
with
other
my
things?
dev environment, which is Ubuntu VM running on VMware Fusion on Mac. If that's where
That's great. I think that's going to be a little harder than other environments because of the architectural differences, but
No, I mean, this is on Intel 64 instead of ARM
Oh.
64.
Okay.
I have
Sure.
two
Yeah.
laptops.
Yeah, Liam, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to we'll like to take to help out with the VM task. So that's what we're going to try and work on. So that's okay if we can help with that. So
What
So then
are
I'll
you
ask
thinking,
maybe after
Liam?
this call, if
Yeah, well-
Liam and Ann can
Yeah.
yeah,
up
we
and-
have what we're working on now is we have a VM Ubuntu VMs running in OpenStack environment. I'm
Cool.
not so we have more or less the management cluster up. We have a bit of a but we're just trying to track the things. So we can help with that. Just on the Mac, our actual OpenStack environment went down last week, so I was trying it out on my MacBook. I have an ARM. It's the gotcha there is the what do you call it, this the container lab doesn't work in ARM, and it's not going to. I think that's going to be a real showstopper for anyone trying. But I did get it working on.
It has nothing, Liam, it has nothing to do with Container Lab. It's to do with the network images don't support ARM. So it's basically
exactly, yeah. The images, it's not built for ARM, so just won't. But I got
because
it
you cannot use it because there's no system that you can plug into. So that's why it's not supported.
Yeah.
But I think if you use
we did get it up on
an Intel Mac, it works because
yeah,
that's
it should work on an Intel Mac, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it working on an old desktop Ubuntu I had here. We'd also like to try it with we won't promise anything yet, John. We'd also like to try it on Azure if we can. We'll see if we can get some resources.
So Liam, are you saying you'll work on an OpenStack or you'll work on the Ubuntu?
It'll be an Ubuntu VM, but they're Ubuntu VMs, but they're running in OpenStack. But that shouldn't make any difference, I wouldn't think.
It shouldn't make any difference. It's just like we want to make sure that we have an init script. Like I'd love to be able to do it like with a single command, because that way people they don't have to do anything, right? If you've got an OpenStack environment, run this command. If you've got a GCE environment, run this command. If you've got a Mac Fusion environment, I don't know, you might have to click and point, or you might be able to run a command. I don't know. I haven't used it for a long time. But I'm gonna put, how about this? I'll put for other environments. We'll say M2. So what I would just ask is that the two of you discuss
Yes.
it, create issues, and we start tracking it.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Sounds good.
And I noticed you have problem typing Azure. Is that playing?
Did I have trouble with that? I don't know. It's just, okay. So that's 235. I would ask that for this one, I think we're pretty close to being able, we might want to merge it and then tweak it. There's a few different PRs that have to merge, but I think that it's in a decent place, as a checkpoint. So especially if we merge some of the other things, there's areas where it's like, since I'm pulling from my book, I have to like do a few weird things, or I've pushed some images manually that we'll probably have to do a round of edits on it after that. But yeah, Vish.
Yeah, can you share what the acceptance criteria should look like for this PR? I know you have shared the command, and I've run that command as of this morning, and I'm trying to see what else should I look for, because the pods are up and running, but I'm like trying to figure out what needs to be done.
So what I'm doing, like ultimately where I want to get, so this is a good question. I think that probably for this PR, this first acceptance criteria should be number 235. That is the management cluster is up and running. So I can go to the UI, I can see that a management repository is there and registered. I can see, we also need a management staging one for our bootstrapping process. So those two are there. I can see the Nefio example packages repository is registered. The
Okay.
Free5GC repository is registered, and that I can sort of poke around and see all those things. Probably we should just start there. And where I was trying to get and didn't quite get to was a couple steps past that.
Mhm.
For one, where's that long thing on the issues? So where I want to get, say in the next couple days, would be where I can apply this package variant set. I'd like to get to this place maybe today or tomorrow. I can apply this package variant set, and I can come back 5 minutes later, and I have those edge clusters up and running, fully registered and working. That gets most of the way there right now. Where it gets stuck is that it looks like while the worker nodes are for the kind clusters are there, they're not joined to the cluster somehow, and it may well be that like the CNI, I didn't even dig into that at all. So
Okay.
what that means is that they don't finish bootstrapping. So while their repositories are there, they're registered, the tokens and secrets are all there, and the Bootstrap controller is trying to install config sync on the edge cluster. It's not, it gets it installed, but config sync's not able to start because the only node in the cluster is the control plane node, and it's tainted. And so it doesn't have anywhere to run. That's the state it's in right now. I don't think that we need to.
So John, to fix,
Yeah.
so just so I got to that state. So what I can do is create a package with the cluster net. So the CNI, it will fix it. But I didn't do it. But so I
Okay.
can, to get there, if you install that package also as on the staging package or the staging repo,
Okay.
then you will install the CNI, and then you will be good. So I'll push a PR for that.
Yeah, if you can push a PR for that package, then I can
Yeah.
try that, and then I think we'll be ready to kind of like, there's probably like 3 or 4 PRs we have to submit and merge, and then we have to point this script at those merged tagged PRs rather than at like some branch that I'm pointing them at right now. And then we can submit this, and then we'll be up through 235 basically actually up through 236 in here. How do I say your name? Fiacra? Is that right?
Yep, that's close enough. Yep. Hey, John. I'm jumping back to 235 again. I'm just wondering, is there any previous learnings or knowledge around different environments? And has that been kind of collected? Maybe there's not enough big enough audience here, but has everybody been targeting GCP or Google Cloud, or in previous, or their own kind of playing around with it, or is there any other learnings with OpenStack Azure?
Anne has been using, I think a lot of people have been using like their MacBooks.
They're local, yeah. Okay.
Local, and then I don't know.
I mean,
Vish,
using
have you
Fedora.
tried it in any other environment? Or Victor's? I think Victor's on vacation. He I think did it in Vagrant at least. But
Okay.
I've been using Fedora basically in the last time.
Okay.
So I might even still be trying to look for there and trying to use Podman and stuff when it comes to kind.
Yeah, so everybody's using kind essentially as a cluster. Yeah.
And then I think even Anne and I both, we played around with kubeadmin to bring up a cluster, but I have not made much progress on that. But
Okay.
yeah.
I see some.
I'm running kubeadmin. I'm not using Kai. I create 2 nodes, 2 VM, each a node,
Mhm.
a control plane and a worker node. And then that's what I've been doing to deploy SMF, UPF, and
Yeah,
Code.
I see some stuff around microcades as well. That's maybe some leftovers from other stuff, or I don't know, are people using
Yeah.
microcades?
saw something
The
in there like
microcades
that
is
too.
there. Initially, it was used to just as part of the end-to-end testing. Rado wanted to try out bringing it up, basically.
Yeah.
So if you
But-
use Kind, for example, the CNI, the MacPhelan plugin, you have to mount it and share it.
Okay.
before
Yeah,
it's
I'm wondering.
deployed.
Yeah, in terms of like
So-
there's lots of flavors of different kind of Kubernetes
Yeah,
management.
so if you
is there a
use
preferred one?
Let's differentiate here. Okay, so there's 3 now different kind of stories
Yeah.
here, right? So one is the sandbox
Mhm.
on GCE. The other is the sandbox on a VM or other non-GCE provider. And then the third is bring your own cluster. So bring your own cluster for the management cluster. Now that I've done that. Most of my work has been done with just an autopilot, GKA autopilot cluster, which is super easy for me and doesn't cost me anything. But for everybody else, it's maybe not so cheap. But so there's some experience there. We actually haven't talked about this. This script doesn't do that. This script is about setting up the sandbox environment. So there is a task here that we need another issue for, to do some refactoring once this merges, that will differentiate between the install of the management and the install of the sandbox. So what is the difference? The management cluster, one, it doesn't bootstrap the cluster. It assumes the cluster is already there. 2, it only includes the base, Nefio packages, whereas the sandbox includes cluster API, like a bunch of other things that would be design choices as a distributor of Nefio that I would make. So I would say, okay, I want cluster API in there. I want Git, I want kind, and so those are all part of the sandbox. We also add like the stock repositories of this free 5GC packages, and there's Nephew example packages. Those are part of the sandbox. So I do want to differentiate between those things, so that when people go to the bring your own, and probably factor that in a way that people can kind of choose. So ultimately, and to me, it's not as critical for R1, but ultimately people should be able to say, I don't want to run cluster API. I don't want to run Git. I just want to run, I want to connect to GitHub instead, and I want to connect to Crossplane for my actuator, right? Like, so I want to make sure our packaging and our installations are factored in such a way that people can make those choices. So everything we've been talking about so far is really more on the sandbox. And there's actually a follow-up task to this once sort of all these pieces merge, to do some refactoring, because like we said, this started with the scripts that were around provisioning the sandbox environment for EDE tests. But it should all be this. We don't need multiple ways to do this. Let's try to refactor it. So
Yeah, no, that was kind of where I was going with it. And I know posted there that there is a kind of a pre-installed image that people can use, but is there a risk in terms of if we open up to, we support every single possible cloud provider, base platform, blah, blah, you end up with a huge amount of variation in terms of how you, or documentation to support and maintain also. But yeah.
yeah,
No,
and
yeah,
in
good to know.
R1 we don't have that kind of capacity, I think. Like if you look at the deck we presented last week, like there's a slide that was not presented live but is in the deck. It's limitations. Well, we only tested with Git and this environment and kind clusters and cluster API, and that's because that's our sandbox and that's all we can do in this time frame. But I think in a follow-on we can start to kind of expand that. Like, anyway, so
that's cool. Yeah, I'll have a look at the Savannah post. There's what I didn't realize the one Summit workshop was on Azure and AWS, so we can have a look at that as well, maybe. And
yeah, but the code's different. I mean, it's different. It's all different now, right? So the big pieces that the big constraints we have right now are around not so much the basic functionality of Nephew. It's around the automation pieces that we're utilizing. So we're utilizing Cluster API. So we built packages for Cluster API to provision kind clusters. In order for us to provision clusters, we need to be able to provision networks that can talk between the clusters. So if we were doing this, say, in provisioning GKE or clusters in GCP, because GKE doesn't even support Malta. So open source Kubernetes clusters in GCP, like we could do that with Cluster API, but we would need to make sure that we carefully set up how those secondary networks are created so that they're in a shared VPC, right? And that's sort of external out-of-band configuration that would have to happen. And that's a lot of documentation, and we could do that, but it's not fully automated. To do the fully automated stack, right now we're scoping it down to this very simple kind clusters in a single VM.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, so we're already over our first 30 minutes. We're just supposed to be. So I think 235 and 236, like I said, we're really close on. And once those are working, I think I don't see big issues with 237. Like I think that already pretty well works. Or at least I should ask, do we have packages for it? Is it packaged yet? What's the state of that? Tal, I guess, would be the one to ask.
Sorry, yeah, I was muted. We're good. I mean, we're not totally done, but we have the 3 controllers running, and Dennis has already started testing, trying to create a call. We have a lingering issue with updating configs for day 2 changes, but I think in terms of integration, I think we're ready to put everything together.
So what we need in order to do 237 right here is even simpler than that. We just need an image and we need a kept package, and we need that kept package in the Nefio example packages and tagged. And once we have that, we can create a PVS that would distribute the workload or distribute the operator across all the edge clusters. So we probably, if we don't have those things, we probably need to make sure we have issues to make sure those things get created.
I think we have those things, but I don't think we've really, at least I haven't tested, like,
Wait,
I haven't tested.
do
that.
we have a cap function, a package function? I don't think we do.
I don't think we need a function. I think we just need a package for it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think
But I
that's
don't think we
interesting.
have created a cap package, right?
So it would have to include all the roles and everything, right? Like there's a bunch of manifests that go along with deploying the workload in Kubernetes that we need to make sure we have all the pieces.
I don't think
Thought
we
I
have.
saw it, but okay,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay, well, whether there is or not, let's
Yeah,
just.
we'll figure it out and come back.
Who can I assign that for to?
I can't take it on. I have other outside Nefio commitment coming
So
up.
I know Dennis is kind of working on it right now, but I don't volunteer him if he doesn't want to volunteer. I see he's not in the meeting now, so
Let me raise it at the 11 p.m. call tonight with Dennis and Stephen, and we'll figure out an answer.
So actually, I was looking at the board. It says done. Implement the initial free 5GC package for operator. I was
let me
looking at.
find it. I'm pretty sure I saw it.
It's
I was-
not
I was-
necessarily the
no,
same
remember-
package, Bala.
Okay. Okay, because it's full.
I've been using it to deploy free 5GC operator, but I'm not so sure it's the right format.
Okay. It's
Well, who should I assign to follow up on this?
Put my name now, please.
Yeah,
Is
it exists. I'm not sure anybody has actually tested it. So
Yeah,
or
it's,
recently.
I just put this issue in the chat.
Yeah, and I linked to the package if anybody
So
wants.
that one is there, but it's from 6 months ago. That's from the workshop.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
not.
Because
Probably
lately
needs-
what we've been doing is make Docker push, make deploy, make
Right.
Docker build, Docker push and deploy. So I'm not so
Yep.
sure that's the right package format.
That's just for your local consumption.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
all those manifests need to go into a package like that one or an update to that package. And then we would create just like on this, we have, so this, what we would have is, where to go?
So
This package variant set creates clusters. Then we create another package variant set that lays down that operator across those clusters. And then we create another package variant set that lays down the specific UPF instances across the clusters, different clusters, the SMF across, like, in fact, we could package that all into one package and then you could do it all in one click and
Yep.
come back 10 minutes later and you'd have something running and then you could run a call through it. That's where I really want to be, but
It doesn't exist as far as I know, because Dennis and I and Ronak have been using the Makefile script to do
Right.
build and
Okay.
test.
okay. So yeah, just follow up on that. That would
Okay.
get us through.
I moved it back to do talk, if you didn't mind.
Can you say that, Bala, again?
I moved it back to do. It was in a done column, that particular
Oh, okay.
thing.
Yeah, it's fine.
Um,
I just want to point out it exists. It needs to be updated. That's it.
that's
Thanks.
Yeah, because I think that's, like John said, it's old, it's from November or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
It may not reflect the latest stuff that we built.
So that's the operator. What just happened? That's the operator. Then we need a package that represents the actual functions. I don't, this refers to them, but we probably, okay. So. the requirement, CRs, etc. that go through. This is actually you might already have some of these. Wim, you guys were testing some your controllers and things. So did you have packages, and were those complete, or do we need to rework some of them in order to fit into the model here?
No, we are complete. The only thing that is still pending, but I need to resolve it with Steven, is the peer config stuff to do the inter SMF UPF part.
Okay.
But we use those packages, yeah, we use those packages. What I never tested, John, one of the things, I don't know whether you tested it, whether you inject cluster context inside of that package. So we basically took that package and then we added manually the cluster context. So
okay, no, we haven't tested that yet. That would be part of, so those packages are going to need to be constructed to accept cluster context, and then the cluster context has to get loaded as part of when we create the clusters. So that's okay.
So someone has to do that. So we are depending on that. So what we did is we took those packages in our test framework, and then we added manually the cluster context. So because otherwise none of our functions do anything.
Injection of context. Okay. So do we have a volunteer to look at how this will come sort of this? So this is updating our current cluster package so that it has a concept of the cluster architecture, that context of like what its master interface for CNI is and things like that. I don't think we modeled beyond the simple model we had in the workshop. So we didn't have to do node pools or anything, which I think is fine for now, because they're just kind clusters with one shape node. So we have to update that cluster package, and then we have to kind of update the packages for the individual network functions so that they accept a config injection of that context. Those are the two things. Any volunteers? And I'm willing to help out if people aren't clear on what needs to be done here.
I can work with the integrate cluster context.
Okay.
If you're, of course, you're willing to help out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So then I'm gonna send this whole thing to you, Fish, and those might split into separate issues, but we'll work that out later. Okay. Awesome. There's my. Okay, so that was this. Okay, we were going through this. That's probably where we should start. Unless there are other, because we can't do any of these things until kind of these are. I mean, people could start working on UI tests. We don't really have a test plan for UI. We probably, if somebody's interested in writing up something that we can do as a test plan. There were a couple of other things. Oh, that reminds me. Do we have Ganesh or Chandra here today? I don't see them. There's a few other UI things that right now, so the way the UI works is it's a backstage. Backstage is this, it's at Spotify, I think, released this open source UI for platform management. And our UI is plugged into that. It's a plugin for that. And there are other plugins for that. We don't, typically in an organization, you deploy Backstage and then you integrate your plugins like as a team, right? But we don't do that. What we do is we just bundle the whole Backstage in an image and we just run our own instance of it. So what we can do is we can actually integrate some of those other plugins. In particular, there's a plugin for Kubernetes. So we can get live view of what's in the management cluster. So right now, when I go and deploy a package, say, stuff's happening in the management cluster. There's a package variant set being created. There's package variants being created out of that. And I can't see any of it except I go into kube control and I run a bunch of kube control commands. So if we added a plugin that allows us to look at the Kubernetes resources living in a Kubernetes cluster, then we would make the UI substantially more functional. It still wouldn't be in Nafio specific. You basically have two sections then, a Kubernetes section and a sort of package management section. We really want to get to where we have a Nafio section, but it's not going to happen in R1, where we understand some of the Nafio resources like our clusters and things like that, and we can kind of give a more holistic view, and especially when we get to the topology pieces. But if we get these lower level pieces in place, it'll make it a lot more functional. So I don't know if anybody else is interested. This doesn't require like the JavaScript skills that implementing the panels and things do. It requires more like system integration. There's like, I mean, Backstage is kind of, it's not like super plug and play. It's like, oh, you want to integrate this plugin here, write this little bit of code. So there is some JavaScript, but it's like well-documented stuff you have to write. So if anybody's interested in doing that, that would be fantastic. So you'd need some Docker skills to build Docker, and you'd need to follow the Backstage configuration instructions. Yeah, Tal.
So related to this, we'd probably like to get the Watcher agent incorporated as well, or rather its resources. So, you know, the topology controller is just now being added, kind of at the end of our process for R1. And its CRDs have just been finalized, right? So Stephen has been working on that. So we would like the UI to also include that. So that means showing the topology, but also showing the status updates from that. So I don't see this happening for R1.
That's not going to happen for that. I mean,
Yeah.
It's possible. Like Chandra and those folks, they put these viewers out in these editors. If you go on the SIG Automation thing, they put them out pretty fast. So now there was a ramp up to get their environments up and running and understand the existing code base, but now they've got it and they can whip these things out pretty fast. But that's a bigger ask, what you're saying. Like,
yeah, I mean, technically we should all be at code freeze. So yeah. I'm just very, very, very worried. Even if people can do it, I wonder if adding any new feature at this point is a good idea, right? But I'll leave it to people's individual judgment if they think that they can handle it, and if they don't have anything more urgent to do.
Yes. The reason like this one, the reason that I think it would be a substantially more compelling thing, and we're integrating an existing piece of code. So it's not like writing our own UI, right? It's including a plugin. So I think there's some chance somebody could do it, but you're right. It's not necessarily the most urgent task. Okay, we are just about out of time, so I want to make sure I'm not just blathering on. Like, what do we? It sounds like those four big things Mala put in are probably where we need to start. We got a few people volunteered to take on some things. What about other folks? Are there people who are itching to have some work to do? I want to make sure everybody feels they have an opportunity to contribute if they have the capacity and availability to do so.
So a couple of things, John, I also wanted to raise a couple of points. One is we have 2 or 3 docs to produce as well in the next couple of weeks. User installation release docs.
Yes.
Maybe it will be it may be as we do these things, we can produce those things as well, some of the artifacts for those, and then we can put them together. The other question is out of the TSC meeting, for the licenses stuff, right? For the Mozilla license specifically. I'm not sure. It's kind of a little bit hazy. Me being out 4 days made my memory vanish. So did Kandan say that we need to contact LF Legal for that?
I think yes, he said, I think we should just send him a note with the details of, hey, can we use this license? And here's our licensing scan information.
Okay.
What do we need to do to, actually, I wouldn't say, can we use this license? I would say, what do we need to do to comply with this license? And is it acceptable to add it to our list of licenses in that case, right? Like, so let's just send it to Kandan and Lucy, and let Lucy, if you can send that note, or talk to Rado, and if you need details from him, and send it to Kandan and Lucy, and then let them follow up with the LF Legal.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Tal, I think you have Tal has hands raised.
Yeah, is your hand stale there, Tal, or you're?
It is stale, but I actually just thought of something.
Okay.
So I suggested in the past that we might be a good idea to have a documentation czar. I'm not volunteering myself, but somebody who just goes over all the documentation related PRs, just make sure they're consistent, that they flow, that they link to each other correctly.
I think more than, yes, we need I think that's a great point. So one of the things we haven't done is make a decision, as far as I know, on an actual documentation platform. My inclination would be to just write them in Markdown in GitHub right now, because then at least we have something. But yeah, we could definitely use somebody to take the lead on the documentation and make sure we have and are making progress, and there's people assigned to write the documents, because there's a pretty substantial task ahead of us with that.
Since Tal won't volunteer himself, can I volunteer him?
So I can, hey Tal, I can be the czar. I can go through the
Yeah, I feel like you also have a lot on your plate. I was wondering if, as John said, there are people who want to contribute and maybe didn't find exactly a place. So, I mean, I can volunteer for everything. I just don't. I want this to be collaborative and make sure that everybody has a chance to shine and contribute to the project. So, yeah.
That's
a great point, Tal. If somebody wants to take it, sure. Otherwise, I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for people who are on the sidelines, not knowing much about the project, this might be a good chance. I think what Tal is proposing is a great one for getting people to.
It's actually an advantage, because somebody who maybe has not been involved with everything, documentation exactly is the place where you're a little bit removed from the day-to-day work. So you can, we're all biased. If engineers are not famously good at writing their own documentation because we're just too involved in it. So I think somebody who's a little bit outside will have the advantage of a clear mind and looking at potential issues. And, when documentation is written, it's sometimes you find like design problems, right? Because
Absolutely.
you see that something that looks obvious is actually not obvious at all. So I think there's an advantage of somebody who might have been a little bit peripheral doing that. But yeah, but if nobody's stepping up right now, I mean, we can, Bala, if you feel comfortable doing that, I can definitely help. And yeah, we can do that.
Sure, Tal. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, then yeah, let's just sync up on Slack. We'll have another call 9 a.m. tomorrow, and I'm gonna keep chugging forward on my pieces, and feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions. But I would like to see if we can get some of these. If anybody can dig in and look at some of these PRs around the dependencies around getting that larger PR merged, I think that will get us, then we'll iterate from there. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you on Slack and see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
You.